Hey, it's Steve, Rock Fantasy. First time doing an interview, not on Zoom, and I'm here with my friend Keith Greene, and we're doing something a little different today uh, on this episode of the Rock Fantasy YouTube channel. We're talking music, but we're completely switching gears. As you can see, we are not in my room, we are at the circus. And I'd like to include things on this channel that I find interesting, and tonight's topic started due to me getting involved with helping and promote an MC the band's playing at the annual Orange County Fair here in Middletown, New York. I've been down here for the last 3 weeks. The first night I stumbled across a gentleman while doing a live interview on a local rock radio station. This gentleman's name is Keith Greene, that we're sitting here looking at right now. And he was there working for the Royal Hanneford Circus, a circus that's been in business since 1690. We ran into each other several nights, enjoying the bands at the fair and sharing a couple adult drinks at night. Turns out Keith was the music director for Ringling Brothers and Barnum and Berkely Circus from 73 to 2000. He is a man that has many interesting stories to tell, and I really wanted to sit down and chat with him and share this with all of you guys. He's currently working for the circus that's one of the few survivors in North America. Of course, with the closing of the Ringling Brothers, Barnum and Bailey, Cole Brothers, Kelly Miller, and many others in the last several years. The circus, if people don't know, has been a way of life for generations of performers and families. It's a shame to see this form of entertainment fall in hard times and possibly display forever. So today I'm sitting down here with Keith to talk about his many years in the business and in music and get some of the history. Keith, welcome.
Oh, thank you.
And how are you today? We're sitting here, we're in the circus ring almost, and let's get it all started. Where were you born?
In North Carolina, Asheboro, North Carolina, little town, little hick town, right in the middle of North Carolina in the Piedmont area. And it was a great place to grow up. It was like growing up in Mayberry.
Oh, was it? Okay.
Yeah, it was. It was so safe, no crime, nobody steals. I mean, it was unbelievable.
And so what got you into music? Or your family into music?
No, my family, nobody could even play a radio.
Really?
So
that's amazing.
But I was in class, excuse me, in I don't know, 5th grade or whatever it was, and they said one day they said anybody who would like to be in the band, go down to the auditorium, and I said I'm for that. So I went down and they asked me, well, what would you be interested in playing? And I said, I want to play trombone.
Okay.
And that was only because Tommy Dorsey had a TV show on every Saturday night,
Mm-hmm.
and he would start out playing I'm Getting Sentimental Over You, and
Mm-hmm.
so that's what I saw, and that's the only instrument I really knew very well.
Okay.
So I ended up joining the band, and I played trombone for many years, and then after about 10 years, I switched to trumpet, and so I still play trombone too, but my main instrument now is trumpet.
Okay. And so let's talk about a little bit, you went to college for music.
I went to, after high school, I went to Berkely School of Music in Boston, and I was there 4 years, was great. Boston, I love Boston. It's a great town, and 2 1/3 million students, so they were always having parties. The Patsy Kai. It was a lot of fun. I had a ball there, and I went to school to write music for movies.
Mm-hmm.
And then when I left, my roommate went on out to LA and started writing music for movies, and I said, well, I want to play jazz for a few years, and then I'll come on out. So I did. I went on the road with 2 or 3 different jazz bands, and did that for like 3 or 4 years, and finally I said, that's it. I'm going to go home and say goodbye to my parents in North Carolina, and go on out to Hollywood.
Okay.
So while I was in Greensboro with my parents, I got a phone call, and they said, we found out you were in town, and we'd like you to come up and play lead trumpet on Ringling Brothers Barnum Berkely Circus.
Wow.
And I said, great, that'll help pay my way to LA. So I went up, did the show. The second day, the conductor asked me to play Fayetteville and Raleigh also. So I said, okay. So that was 3 weeks.
Yeah.
And did Fayetteville. The first day in Raleigh, the conductor had a heart attack.
Oh.
And the promoter for the show just happened to be a drummer that went to Berkely with me. And he called the owner and said, I know this guy, he can conduct. And they said, hire him. So I was going to stay 1 year for the money, but 27 years and 3 wives later, I got out, you know. And so it was great life.
And I guess we talked about that, and we just found out how you got your job in Ringling. And of course, what was life like living and working with Ringling? And you started in '73, right?
Yeah.
So you were there through some of the really popular years, and you finished a job with them in 2000. You had said, what was it like you living on the train and traveling?
I would not believe that was the most wonderful thing, because you go to sleep Sunday night and wake up Monday in another town. Your car's sitting outside. You didn't go anywhere, and you get to ride and look at the whole United States out the windows while you're driving, going down the road on the train. I mean, it was an unbelievable thing. I mean, I hear train whistles, you know.
And you think you're home?
Oh gosh, it's like, because I heard them all the time. You know?
Yeah.
And it was such a great life. And what was really amazing was, no matter what happened in the world, we could be at war and you'd never know, because you do the same thing. You work every week. You go to another town. You go in and perform to all these people in the arenas. So it was a carefree life, but a lot of fun. 300 performers from all over the world. You know, they call it the greatest show on earth, because that's what it was. That the only people that were American were the staff.
Yeah.
And some of the showgirls, and most of the people were from Europe. You know, they come over here and they don't speak English, and it was a ball to try to communicate with people.
It was I say the circus was so, like, it was every race.
Oh, yep.
It was, everybody was equal in the circus. It seemed like, I'm talking from being outside of circus, because you know I'm a fan.
Yeah.
My parents brought me to Ringling in the '60s in New York City. I went to see and took my my family in the '80s to see The Living Unicorn, which we have a program from. I think that you might even be holding one of these here. But you found the picture. You've got some picture. No, I don't know. Well, anyhow, went to see. So I've seen you perform without even knowing you. And you've met so many celebrities in Ringling Brothers over the years. We've chatted a little bit candidly about that. And a lot of people that are watching this, they think of the circus now. They don't really know much about it, because Ringling's been going a few years. But back then, I mean, the circus was big time. You had all the TV stars coming out to the shows to promote TV programs, movies.
In LA, we had Star Night, so all the stars would be there, and they would get to get on an elephant and ride around in the arena on the elephant before they go up in the seats and watch the show. And and the photographers were there to take pictures of all these stars. So they were in all the magazines in the supermarkets. You know, a couple of days later, and so the stars got publicity. They got to see the show, and I got to meet them, because I would write music from their last movie or TV show to play while they're riding around. So I got to talk to them all and got to know them. So it was great, and I'd see them every 2 years. We'd go back to LA. I'd get to see them again, and so a lot of them were really nice people, and I got to meet a lot of them.
So let's pick out a couple stories, or a couple people. I mean, you've met. You told me the other day, like, I asked you what celebrities have you met, and you had an answer for me.
Oh God, well,
what ones you hadn't?
Tony Danza, Henry Winkler, Morgan Freeman. I mean, all these guys were. Arnold Schwarzenegger. I mean, Stevie Wonder. You know.
Stevie Wonder. Did Stevie Wonder ride the elephant?
Yes.
Even vision impaired,
they got
like
him
you?
Up on the elephant, and he got to ride it.
And what song did you play when Stevie was up there? Do you remember?
It might have been Sir Duke.
Okay. So did you have other musicians too?
Oh yeah, we had like a 25-piece band.
No, I mean other musicians that actually did the elephant ride, that from other bands or singers or. I remember you.
I'm sure there were.
You were mentioning Gene Simmons the other day.
Well, we had
from Kiss.
We had quite a few. I mean, all the big names.
Yeah.
I mean, there were so many funny things. Like Hopalong Cassidy.
Oh yeah.
Hopalong Cassidy, he came to the show and they announced him. He was going to be guest ringmaster. So they said, okay, we're going to walk out in the center, go out in the center ring. But they said, why don't you ride a horse in? Because they announced him as the world's
because he was a cowboy.
The world's best bareback rider.
Mm-hmm.
So he didn't have a horse with him. So he borrowed one of Jeanette Williams's horses to ride out to the center ring. So he rides out to the center ring, and the horse rears up and throws him off.
Oh, you're kidding.
So here's the world's best bareback rider getting thrown off.
In front of a packed arena.
20,000 people, yeah. So poor guy was embarrassed for him, but a lot of stupid things like that happen,
You said that Adrienne Barbeau had a wardrobe malfunction once.
She sure did. She was, when they announced her, she had a little halter top on, and she's beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
She was sitting on the elephant right beside of the bandstand because the elephants would lay down so you could get up on their back easier. And then the elephant would raise up one leg, and her right boob fell out. And when he raised up his left leg, the other boob fell out. And she wasn't about to let go of the rope because she's scared to death.
Sure.
And so they announce her, and I give a downbeat, and nobody played because they're looking at her. And I said, guys, we got to play. Come on. But she went about 100 feet before she could get her body back in her costume.
Now, in the day of we're living in now, with everybody has a phone like I have in my hand now, how that thing would have been viral on Instagram and Facebook and whatever else. You also mentioned a great story. I don't know if you'd like to share it about running into Michael Jackson on the circus. You think we can share that one on here?
Yeah, that was we would rehearse the band in every town with the local musicians, and I didn't spend a lot of time rehearsing because I would tell them, if you can't read music, you're going to be in trouble anyway. But if you can't play it, I will. So I liked having bad bands because it gave me more to do.
Yeah.
But anyway, we were in LA doing our rehearsal. So I go to the Pie Car and get a cup of coffee. That's a little circus restaurant.
The Pie Car, yeah.
Yeah, so I got a coffee and I got back to the bandstand and we were getting ready to rehearse, and I looked down on the floor and I saw a cockroach. Biggest cockroach I've ever seen in my life. He must have been 5 inches long. It's huge. And so I drank one of my coffees real quick and I put it over the top of the cockroach and put a music book on it to hold it down.
Yeah.
And we did the rehearsal, and at the end of the rehearsal, I took a napkin and got the cockroach out of the cup, and we went to wardrobe, and I took a string, some thread, and made a noose and put it around the cockroach's neck. And he was fighting me about that, but I got it around his neck.
Crazy story.
Fly, because they had wings. And anyway, the organist's wife works in the office, and he said, "Let's go show Chris this cockroach."
Mm-hmm.
So I said, "Okay." So we went in the office, and there were 2 clowns sitting in there, and I didn't know who they were, but they were just sitting there, and we showed Chris the cockroach, and then we went back and did the show.
Mm-hmm.
And, at the end of the show, we went back into the office. And Chris said, "Do you know who those 2 clowns were?" And I said, "No." She said, "That was Michael Jackson and Gary Coleman. They had to put clown makeup on so they could come to the show. But Michael Jackson wanted to buy my cockroach."
Isn't that a crazy? That's just the craziest story ever.
I know, if he had told me that it was Michael Jackson, I would have sold it to him for $500,000.
Man, you got a good price for that. The circus and Ringling Brothers never billed a circus cockroach. I don't think. Have it? No. You could have invented a whole new act. Maybe that would have been okay with the way people think about the animal acts. Maybe cockroaches would be all right.
Yeah. The cockroach act, they could paint the wings, purple and pink.
I mean, so in the 70s, of course, all those TV shows, you probably had guys, did you have like Eric Estrada there and Chips and stuff like that? And of course you had, maybe you had, did you ever have the Dukes of Hazzard guys there? Or no?
I
don't remember.
They had so many people. I know we had Zsa Zsa Gabor.
Oh yeah.
I mean, it's just,
yeah.
Because, Ringling Brothers is a big show.
And I mean,
so
and it's,
everybody comes,
so let's talk about some of the circus performers you've worked with over the years. I mean, the famous clowns, or some of the, like the famous animal trainers or aerialists or something. If you wanted to mention a couple of them.
Williams was the most famous animal trainer ever, I think.
Yeah.
And he was on the show I was on.
Okay.
The Red Unit, and so I got to know him real well.
Mm-hmm.
We had numerous parties and outings. I took him snow skiing.
Oh, okay.
Ernie Fell got so mad at me because I take his star that he makes millions of dollars, and he said, "Don't you ever take him anywhere dangerous like that."
Like skiing?
Because he said, "What if he break a leg?"
Yeah.
And I said, "Well, I didn't think about that, but yeah, we had. He was there. All the circus performers are all unbelievable.
Did you work with any?
Great shape.
Mm-hmm. Of course. Right? Did you work with any of the famous clowns? Lou Jacobs.
Lou Jacobs was on the show I was on
Mm-hmm.
for years. Emmett Kelly had been on there, but he left right before I got there.
You were talking about a performer that was a dwarf, a Michu, one day.
Oh yeah, Mishu. Oh my God, what a little pervert.
Was he?
Yeah.
Remember, we're gonna have this up on the air.
Yeah. No, he was. Well, he didn't speak a lot of good English.
Okay.
So the first thing you learn when you come over to a country is dirty words anyway.
Okay.
So that's what you would hear coming out of his mouth, because that's what people would teach him.
And he was kind of like a modern day Tom Thumb, right?
Oh yeah, he was. He was the shortest guy, and he was a funny little guy though.
Did he get married in the circus?
Not really, but they did have a production number where he was marrying one of the other little midget girls, and so he was the wedding of Tom Thumb. They were making it out like he was Tom Thumb,
yes,
and he was getting married.
I can't remember that.
Big production that they did, but
yeah. And what were some of the favorite, maybe memorable acts that, you've worked so many over the years, things that you were just show-stopping, like high trapeze, or...
Well, Tito Guyona, I don't know if you knew who he was. What's her name? Meredith, an actress. They almost got married. They were together for many years. Mm-hmm. But he dated her and would fly her in all the time. But they were, all, most of those guys were like big stars.
You also mentioned that Doc Severson story.
Well,
who was the?
He was the conductor on the Johnny Carson.
Johnny Carson, of course.
For many years, and I worked with him in about 69 or 70 at the Ohio State Fair.
Oh.
That's the first time I actually got to see Doc.
Mm-hmm.
And I met him then, and he was a great guy. And in fact, the way I met him was, they said we got to the park where we were playing, and they said, okay, the drummer and I, they said, you go in the dressing room and hang up your clothes, and we're going to do a sound check in about a half hour. Yeah. Excuse me. So they said, go warm up, and we're going to do this. So I go in, the drummer and I walk in, and I hung up my clothes, and I looked, and there's two tuxedos over here. One of them looked like somebody just took it out of a brown paper bag and hung it up, and the other one had mirrors in it. And I said, who would wear that gaudy crap, you know? And I mean, I'm looking at this and said, oh my God. So anyway, I took my horn out and I started warming up. And I got up to, you know, double high C. I'm playing some high notes. And all of a sudden, the guy sitting on the bed reading the newspaper pulled the paper down and said, that sounds pretty good. He said, what kind of horn you got? And I said, oh my God, that's Doc Severson. And that's his gaudy clothes. And he's sitting this close to me. And I was so embarrassed, you know, I didn't say, I'm sorry about your clothes, you know. But,
I mean, he was kind of dressed, I mean, you're talking about gaudy clothes. Now when you work with a circus, I mean, everything's gaudy kind of.
That's the way he wore.
Of course, he was circus without even being in the circus,
sure was.
right?
And but he was such a nice guy. I said, he said, what kind of horn do you have? I said, your Severinsen, Eterna Doc Severinsen model. And so he said, let me see it. Well, it clanked and made noises. The pads fell off the valves, and it clank, 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 you know. And he said, you need to get a new horn. And I said, well, I will sometime. So we played that week, and at the end of the week, he gave me his card and said, call me when you have time to go up to the factory, and you got to get a new horn. So I did. I went up there. I thought I was going to get, you know, discount or something. So I go in, and they said, oh, Doc said you were coming, and so they treated me so nice. They brought all these horns in, and played them, and they said, oh, that one sounds great. So I took the horn. I went in there with my checkbook, and they said, oh, no, this is on Doc. I said, wow.
That's cool.
By the next year, I think that was about the time I got with the circus. So the next time I saw him, we were in New York City, and I went down to the studio. I went with Gunther Gable-Williams, who was going to be on the show that day. Oh, wow. So I went with Gunther down to the studio because he was going to be on Johnny Carson's show. Yeah. And so I saw Doc, and he said, still got the horn? I said, yeah. He said, you need another one? And so I went back to the factory and tried them, got another one. Finally, I just told them, I said, just send me a horn. They're all good. They're great. So they sent me one every year on Doc. So I got 30 trumpets, one every year for 30 years.
That's amazing.
But yeah, we did the show, and I got to see him then. So I saw him every year. And I went on the show probably 25 or 30 times and played.
You want to understand? You performed on the Johnny Carson.
With him. We would play jazz duets and do solos together. But of course, it was during the commercials, and so you wouldn't really get to see me or Doc. But you'd see Johnny Carson have a pencil, and he'd cut the band off, and he would.
So you guys would play for the live audience while the commercials were filmed on TV.
And then Johnny would say, "That was Keith and Doc. Thanks, guys." You know, you'd hear him say that.
That's great. And,
but you didn't get to see us. But I went on there many times.
So music, of course, is a huge part of the flow of the circus. You play different styles of music for different acts. Like the trapeze would have a different style than an animal act or a juggler, right?
Yeah, yep.
And there was also, my dad used to talk about this, how the show would go on. My dad was not affiliated with circus, also a fan. We'd go to Ringling, we'd go to Clyde Beatty Cole Brothers every year, who stopped here in Middletown. And kind of the motto that I run, and I have a record store, and I kind of, you know, I got sawdust in my blood a little from doing the fairs. But the show would always go on if someone was injured or there was a mishap. And you would play a certain song, and it would bring the clowns out, and it would cheer up the crowd if there was someone injured or something worse. And what song was that?
We would play 12th Street Rag.
We got some performers over here practicing. I think he plays a little lion, right?
Yeah, he does.
Anyhow, yeah, go ahead.
We would play 12th Street Rag because only musicians knew the song. You know, everybody would know it if they hear it. And so since I was the main one that watched all of the shows, the performance director or anybody else might be in the back getting the next act ready. But since I was always there, if something happened, I would immediately go to 12th Street Rag, and then they knew something happened, so the clowns would come out immediately and get the people's attention off of whatever happened.
Yeah. And how did that go a little bit without your horn?
Oh, just You know, and
Classic.
and, I mean that it would happen like
It was a happy song.
Oh yeah, yeah. It was,
If you hear it, you'll be happy.
and
Whether
the clowns would be walking around. We were in Japan in 1988 for 6 months,
Mhm.
and one day during the shows, the generators that ran the power ran out of fuel.
Mm-hmm.
So the lights went out, and the high wire act is working. So when the power goes out, we brought clowns out, but
Yeah.
you couldn't see them too good, you know, because it was kind of dark. But but they couldn't work, so we played 12th Street Rag for that.
Okay.
But anytime anybody would fall or get hurt, that would just help them get the person up and get him to the.
I guess now that we're thinking about this, I didn't plan this well. I should have had you bring your horn out and play a song for us. Maybe we can do that in the next segment. I'll come meet up with you on the road one day. So obviously, what countries have you traveled with around this world with Ringling Brothers? And I wanted to go into another question a little later. Who else you've worked with? Because you've stopped working, and this is 22 years since you've left Ringling now. Let's catch up and see what other countries you've traveled to and performed.
Well, I did. We, of course, we played Canada with the Ringling. You know, we were in Canada and Mexico. We'd go stay a month at a time in Mexico City.
Okay.
And we played all through Canada. I mean,
Okay.
up there it was so cold. But I was in Japan and Thailand.
Oh.
And so I also worked some with the ice shows, because Ringling owns ice shows too. So
Yes.
I did a little
The
bit
Ice
of that.
Capades.
Yeah,
and whatnot.
Ice Follies, and then Disney on Ice.
Disney on Ice.
They bought Disney on Ice. Disney don't even own their own ice shows.
They don't?
No, Ringling.
So Feld still owns that?
Yep. And, so I worked a little bit on some of the music on that show. And so I would help a couple of other people that was their job, but then I would go with them sometimes to help them a little bit. But so I did get to travel and see a lot, but sometimes I didn't see much because I'd go in and we'd work on the music, and then they'd fly me out. You know, but you know, with Ringling, I mean, the travel was great. Everything was fun. A lot of people, big happy family.
And coming present to the present day here, and you're working with Hannaford and Royal Hanneford, you also have some folks on the lot here that worked for Ringling over the years too. I believe your main clown was in the very final Ringling Brothers performance. I had met him, and his name is Carlos, and he was part of the Flying Trapeze.
Yep, he was. And I mean, we've got quite a few people on the show had been on Ringling off and on, because they hired so many people.
Because they were the biggest thing.
Yeah.
And now, I don't mean to interrupt you, and now that we're here in 2022, we could talk a little bit about the Royal Hanneford Circus, because this is mind-blowing to me as I walked around and first met with you, how long this circus has been in business since 1690, since before the Declaration of Independence. And you have folks here in this building or in the trailers behind us as we were filming this about 2 hours before the first act today, that are direct descendants of the original family, the Hannaford family, that are still here, which I find amazing.
Sure.
How many generations can that be? We're talking over like 300 years.
Yeah, well, I know Carlos, I think he has 8 generations, and Nellie and the rest of them are like 10 or 12 generations. And so it's, I mean, the circus has been around forever, and this show has been around. This is actually the best show. I've worked with a couple other circuses also. I did Hannaford Circus a little bit. I did Loomis Circus. But this one is the most fun. It's a big family. Everybody gets along. Everybody helps. Everybody does everything. And I mean, the big barbecues, big parties every night.
I know. I had you over in my backyard having some beers the other night, and now this is the circus family, because they actually called to check on you when you were over with the announcer, and what was his name? He's not here today. He's already moving equipment to another spot.
Chris.
Was over, and you got a call. I think it was about 2 in the morning. What are you guys doing? You okay?
Yeah.
But we were hanging out because I have a collection of circus memorabilia in a shed in my backyard, and I wanted to. These are the first guys that I've ever actually had over. We tried to a few years ago when Cole Brothers was still in town. We tried to, but it was always tough to get them over because they were in, set the tent up, and then out the same night. I mean, sometimes they were here for a couple of years. I didn't get to know them well enough, but I would have loved to have them over. But so you guys are in a building today as we're filming. You can see we're in the Orange County Fair Arena, but you're under a tent a lot.
On the summer dates, we do fair dates, and so a lot of the towns there is no buildings, and so we set up a big tent.
Yeah.
And we perform in that. At the beginning of the year, we play coliseums till the summer. We do fair dates, and we've got like 2 or 3 more weeks, and then we're going back into the coliseum.
You are, okay.
Till December. And then we'll go to Florida, and I'll put a new show together, and I'm writing a new opening.
I know you've been working on that.
Working on that for days, and so then we'll go back. We'll spend a month putting the show together, and then January we're back out on the road again.
It's just a shame that as you sit around and with the pandemic too, took a big chunk out of the carnival and the circus business. And you explained, and I think one of the other performers explained, that a lot of people, much like the rock and roll bands, they were all home too, and none of these people knew what to do because they're constantly on the road. How do I stay in an apartment? And some people actually found regular 9 to 5 and regular jobs and didn't want to come back to the lifestyle.
A lot of people have never had a real job.
Yeah.
Circus people, that's what they do.
Yeah.
They do it their whole life, and their grandparents and their parents. I mean, it goes forever. But when this pandemic hit, a lot of these people had no choice. Everything closed, so they had to get other work, get a day job, and at the end of the year and a half that we were out of work, a lot of them said, "I'm not going back." They finally got a job, and they said they're out of shape. They gained weight, sitting on their butt eating.
And you gotta stay in shape to do this stuff.
Yeah,
I mean, even if you're setting up the stuff, you gotta work hard.
Circus people have to be in great shape because you're risking their life anyway. They do these acts, and anybody can get killed in these things. I've seen so many people get hurt over the years, and so it's very dangerous, and you have to be in great shape, and they usually are. They work out all day, just what they do, and the show is working out.
I remember the other night because a couple of the guys were going to come hang out with us, and you said, "Hey, they're practicing."
Oh yeah.
They practice, and right now I saw them last night when I was here after the concert, that they were in here practicing because you guys are setting up into a couple units next week. You got the week off.
Yeah.
But some of the other guys are going to the New Paltz Fair up in Ulster County, and then some are going further upstate, and then so it's a constant.
Well, what's really funny though is I'll go maybe in some town, I'll go out to a club, maybe go dancing or go to a restaurant and drink, and I'll be sitting at the bar, and all of a sudden I'll look around, here comes 6 or 8 circus people, and they'll walk in the door and they'll do flip-flops, across the floor and say, "Ta-da!" People are saying, "Who the heck are they?"
I worked in the pro wrestling business for a while. I think this all kind of goes together: the pro wrestling, the rock and roll bands, the circuses, and we'd go into town and we'd have some of the wrestlers with us. I mean, way back in the day, a lot of the wrestling came out of the carnival.
Yeah.
And you had one story before I forget about it. I got my notes here. The other night there was a great Van Halen tribute band here called Totally Unchained. You were telling me that night that you had some run-ins with Mr. Eddie Van Halen and Valerie Bertinelli. And let's hear a little bit about that story before we wrap this up a little bit today.
Our guitar player that we had, Mark Griffith, was on the circus with me.
Yeah.
And Mark lived with Eddie Van Halen in L.A. And,
that's something, isn't it?
For many years.
And what was that? What years?
Oh God, I guess that
was that before Van Halen became very popular?
Yeah.
Okay.
And
so probably mid-70s.
So they lived together and knew each other real well, and so of course all the bands come through New York City, and so Eddie.
You got the circus dogs going.
Yep. they're waking up. But Eddie Van Halen came to Madison Square Garden, and so they called me and said, "Hey Keith, there's somebody down in the employees entrance asking about you." So I go down there, and it was Eddie, and he said, "Can you get me in?" Yeah, I said, "Come on." So I took him up, and he came in with one of his kids, and
Probably Wolfgang.
I'm not real sure
Yeah,
which one it was.
his kid actually performs now. He's out doing tour. Yeah.
But a couple of days later, Valerie came, his wife, and Valerie Berkely, and so I got down and got her in. So she would come because her kids were the same age as Mark, the guitar player's kid, and they knew each other because they were kids together. So I would go down and get her sometimes 2 or 3 times a week, and she would come over so her kids could play with some circus kids.
That's something.
And so yeah, I got to know them. You meet all these people. I mean, everybody. You know, I remember what the heck's that guy's name? The bass player.
From Van Halen.
He was a jazz. Just went brain dead. He actually. Some people killed him, but
Oh, really?
he was the best bass player.
Jocko?
Yeah, Jocko.
Yeah.
Oh my God, he would show up all the time.
Really?
He came in Miami, in New York City, everywhere. He would always come, and they'd say, "There's some crazy guy down here. Can you?" He'd say, "Asking for you." So I'd go down and get Jocko in, and.
You've got a couple programs that were in my collection, and maybe we can show a picture of you from back in the day. Do you have one ready?
Well,
This is from
Kenneth Feld and I.
And there is Mr. Greene, and the owner of Ringling Brothers at the time, Kenneth Feld. And look at that snazzy suit and that, and he's still got hair. And I tell you what, it's just been it's great to have you on. This is the first time I've talked circus. I think this is something I'd like to do. I'd like to interview some more circus performers down the road. And this is a circus that I brought my niece to, and my wife's father. We went to the circus at the Meadowlands Arena, and this is when Ringling found the living unicorn. And who would have known that? I didn't. I remember we were sitting way up in the nosebleeds because back then, you would do how many shows a day? Like, let's say when you were in a town, you do a matinee
we would do 3 a lot of times. 3 shows a day, and they were actually when we first started, they were 3-hour shows. We had to cut it down less than 3 hours because in a big city like New York City, they had union employees.
Sure.
If the show was over 3 hours, it cost a lot of money.
And there's Gunther, who we talked about earlier. We got a little glare. Let me see. That's the glare from the circus, from the lights. And there's the unicorn, which was, I don't know. That was a good story too. We talked about that unicorn because I remember people going crazy. Oh my God, it wasn't a real unicorn. Oh my God, they glued a horn on it. But you knew the story about that too.
Well, the animal rights people would come and they would take it. They would come and
they actually took the goat or the unicorn.
Take it off. They would haul it away.
Oh.
They bring the cops. They say we got to check to be sure this is not. They thought they were going to get something over on the surface, and so they would come in and steal the unicorn, take it down and X-ray it, and then bring it back and say it's real, because the people that had these, it was a goat with the one horn. And with long hair, it was beautiful. The unicorn was really beautiful.
Yeah.
And but they were thinking that somebody transplanted it and all this. But
of course.
When it's a baby, you put rubber bands on the 2 horns.
Oh.
They grow together. And your head's soft when you're little, and they would go together just like your teeth.
Yeah.
And so then when it grows into one horn. And it would be like a foot long. And
the circus is very much like pro wrestling, because I remember it back in the 80s or 90s in the glory days of WCW. They came out And they pretend they'd find, like, a guy, a native in the jungle, like Kamala, James Harris, who I knew years ago. And then they came out one time, I still remember Dusty Rhodes, they brought a guy out and they were pretending he was the Loch Ness Monster. So, but you actually had a real unicorn. And it was like, I do believe that is the Loch Ness Monster. So, it's all the entertainment, and I just hope that, like now I feel with this demise of the circus and how much it costs to travel and everything, I hope people get to come out, and when you see a circus in town, come enjoy it.
Yeah.
And the fun and happiness of clowns will never be known, because the generations coming out now just think the clowns are from horror movies, or something you see at the Spirit Halloween stores. Because now when I grew up, and of course you're older than I am, I'm 61, and now when we grew up, a clown meant an amusement park, a happy popcorn, cotton candy,
and have a clown come to the
party.
party.
And now it's like Stephen King's It, or this and that. And so and then we heard that Ringling is trying to come back. I believe they have announced they're coming back next year, but I know I understand they don't have the animals because what's going on with that in the world, which is unfortunate, because I believe there's a real bond between the trainers and those animals. But they said they're not even going to have clowns, and I don't get that at all.
I don't either. I don't understand that. I mean, we still have elephants and tigers in some towns.
Certain states.
Yeah, certain states.
And we don't need the clowns to only be in horror movies. We need them to cheer us up, especially in these days.
Yeah.
And I tell you, I've been down here for a couple of weeks and busy with my store. I haven't watched the news. And then this morning when I called Keith, he says, I just got cable back and I'm watching Meet the Press. I'm like, come on, you've been too happy. Don't do that right now.
Yeah, it's terrible.
So for the current circus, I guess they can find the Royal Hanneford on Facebook, and there's probably a website that you can look up. So if you guys want to come out and meet Keith, and I'm going to try to share this around, and hopefully I can get out here and interview some other circus performers, just something different, because this is something different with the channel. Most people come to this channel for heavy metal, or I do pinball related stuff too, but I thought this was really great having you here. And I love these chairs.
Oh, yeah.
These are the VIP seats, obviously, but this circus is free. When you come to this fair, it's $10 to get in. So you can't beat it. You $10, you walk in, you get, it was about a 45-minute show. This show is, and
normally it's 2 hours, or a little over 2 hours, but fair dates,
usually, yeah. I got to come catch a whole show soon. Anything you'd like to add before we wrap this interview up today, Keith?
No, it's just
What were some of your influences in music growing up as a kid, other than, you did mention Tommy Dorsey, so you were into the big band sound the most?
Yeah, I mean, growing up in North Carolina, of course it was country music.
Country, a hee-haw.
It was country music was what you heard on the radio.
Sure.
And that was popular, but Elvis Presley came along, and then that started changing. But I had a little band, and we played big band music and the popular music that we're playing on the radio.
Yeah.
So I mean, I got, we performed and played parties and stuff. So I just went with the music of the day all the time.
I read in I think it's 2017, you were inducted into the Windjammers Hall of Fame. And what is the Windjammers? That's a circus fraternity?
The circus, yeah, it's the musicians for circuses. And,
okay.
They get together and they perform at a lot of the big towns. They show up in a lot of the towns when we do fair days.
Okay.
They'll bring a 10 or 15 piece band, and they'll be playing marches and traditional circus music usually.
I've been a member of the CFA, which is the Circus Fans Association, and I got to renew my dues. Somebody's watching us. If Keogh doesn't send us pay, and with the pandemic and all this crazy stuff, I'm going to get back into it, because they do send you out a magazine still and everything else.
Yeah, the white tops.
Yes, white tops. Yep.
Yeah, I used to get those.
I'm sure you're probably in a few of them when I go home and look through them now.
I have been. I've done interviews and those for the white tops many times.
Well, it's been really an honor to have you on the channel today, and I hope our viewers enjoy this, and maybe we can share this around to some of the circus things. One last question. You are, I don't know if we want to disclose your age on the film.
Yeah, sure.
but you were 76 years old. Most folks would be retired by now, just playing golf. What keeps you going with this?
Just the circus. I mean, it's I like, well, you said like sawdust in your veins. I mean, it's like, I love it. It's so much fun. It's the only thing that's a challenge.
Mm-hmm.
You know, because if I stop and go play in regular bands, it gets so boring because it's not a challenge. But circus stuff is hard.
Is it?
And it's a lot of fun. And,
Yeah.
you know, you feel like you've done something when you can play and get through a show.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's a big challenge. You know?
I think I'm going to try to bring you back on here down the road a little bit and have you play a couple songs on the horn. I'll come over and tape you over here when you're jamming in the
Or, yeah, come record us during the show.
I should one day.
Yeah, you can do that.
Yeah, I should. But I guess that'll wrap this episode up. And Rock Fantasy goes to the circus, and with the legendary Keith Greene. And this man, if you ever come across him, stop and chat with him, because he loves to talk and he'll make you feel good about things.
Great, thank you.
Well, thanks for watching. If you like what the channel's doing, take a moment, hit subscribe, and hit that like button. And what's it we say at the end? May all your days.
The circus day.
And what do we also say in the carnival? Is it see? We don't say goodbye, right? We see
you down the road.
See you down the road. And there's one other thing that you mentioned. I didn't know what you were talking about the other day, but I've heard it. You said there's something to blow out at the end. The blowout means that you run an act. Blow off.
The blow off. That's usually that's a concessions thing. Sometimes the blow off, they'll sell stuff as you leave.
Like popcorn
Yeah,
is cheaper, and you set up a pony ride for
yeah.
that. Yep, here. Okay. Oh well, come and see the Hannaford Circus this summer. Check your fare schedules. Where are you heading this summer? I know you go.
Cobleskill.
You go to Cobleskill. I know you've gone to the Tuscarora Fair out in Junata County Fair. I went there. It's a Port Royal Speedway.
Oh yeah.
I saw you. I think that's around Labor Day. I know that's going. That's a great little
3
fair.
weeks last year.
Great little fair.
Yep.
Alrighty, so that'll wrap this episode up. We got about 46 minutes of talking with Keith. And
Right.
thank you, everyone, and thank you, Keith.